Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. I was just starting to make some headway on clearing out my email inboxes, and that's been obliterated. I've been getting flooded with questions related to a recent move by the Alberta government. And what they've done is two things. The first is they sent a letter to the federal government saying, we are taking over handling any Firearms Act charges. And the second is they've said, we are issuing a direction to all Crown prosecutors in Alberta not to proceed with charges in certain circumstances. So lots of people have been asking questions, most of which are some variation of, does this mean I can take my Mini 14 out and use it to hunt coyotes again? Because I used to do that all the time and I haven't been able to since the order in council. So I'm going to try to sort of address what's going on with this, what it means in a practical sense, and I guess we'll just dive right in. Now, I'm going to start with the letter that was sent from the Alberta government off to the federal government, and that is right here. This was posted online, so it's an open letter. It says, Minister Lametti, I am writing to inform you that I am directing that jurisdiction over the handling of charges under the Federal Firearms Act be taken over by Alberta's Crown prosecutors effective January 1st, 2023. And there's a lot going on here. So the first thing is charges under the Federal Firearms Act. I'm not sure what they're referring to here. The Firearms Act does have offenses contained within it, but people are almost never charged with them. In fact, I have never seen a charge under the Firearms Act offense provisions. Instead, people get charged under the provisions that are in the Criminal Code of Canada. So things like careless use of a firearm, storing a firearm in a fashion that is, contrary to the regulations, possession of a firearm when you don't have a license for it, pointing a firearm, all of these things are under the criminal code. And so saying charges under the Federal Firearms Act, I don't know if that's what they're intending to refer to. There's other possibilities for what they might mean. They might mean things like if you get a firearm license revocation, but it's really unclear. And that I am concerned about because I'm wondering if it means that maybe they don't understand these laws well enough, but let's assume that they mean all of the sort of criminal code provisions. So the second issue with this is that those are already pursued in Alberta by the provincial government. There is an exception to that, but the provincial government is the one that will handle the charges if, for instance, you get a prohibited handgun and you take it into a bank and you point it at the bank teller and say, give me all of the money. It'll be the provincial crown that runs that file. Similarly, if you have, a bunch of firearms and no license, the provincial crown already handles that file. So trying to say we're going to take that back from the federal government when it's already the provincial crown handling it seems a little bit strange to me. Now, I did say there was an exception, and the exception is that the federal crown pursues drug trafficking and drug production and these kinds of charges, and those charges might also include a firearm in some capacity. So you might have a drug dealer who also has a gun, and in that case, the federal crown will be handling the gun charges as well. So I don't think that they're planning on taking those files away from the federal government. That seems like it would be an unusual step. So again, I don't really know what this letter is promising to do here. It seems like this is more of a show move than a practical move. Now, the other aspect is this sort of amnesty aspect where they're saying we're not going to pursue charges in certain circumstances. So let's talk about that one. And this one is lots of people have had questions about this one because, again, this is where we get people asking, can I go hunting again with these rifles that were banned? So we'll just bring that up here. It says, on May 1st, 2020, the federal government banned more than 1,500 types of firearms and put an amnesty in place until October 2023. When that amnesty expires, otherwise law-abiding Albertans could face jail time under the criminal code simply for possessing property they legally purchased. That is correct. And they say, with Alberta taking back constitutional jurisdiction for handling charges under the Firearms Act, Alberta's Crown prosecutors will now determine whether or not to pursue charges. So here, it looks like they're suggesting that they are taking over charges under the criminal code, which again, they were already doing. And so this is a little bit unusual. It seems that that letter says, criminal code here, but yeah. So this is sort of a statement of a direction towards Alberta's Crown prosecutors. It's saying this is how we think you guys should conduct files. And we'll scroll down to the bottom here as to what they say. It says, the protocol states that it will not be in the public interest to proceed with prosecuting a charge of possession of a banned firearm when, first, the accused lawfully obtained the firearm or prohibited device prior to May 1st, 2020. Second, the firearm or prohibited device was reclassified as prohibited on May 1st, 2020. Third, the accused has not been charged with any other offenses related to the possession or use of that firearm. Okay, so this is being very specific to the order in council, and critically, we see this aspect of the accused has not been charged with any other offenses related to the possession or use of that firearm. Now, if you were to take your Mini 14 or your AR-15 to the range, well, then you might get charged with other offenses relating to that. So I don't think that this means that they even intend to not prosecute those people. I think that they're just saying, listen, we are not going to prosecute people who just have them in a safe. Okay, so that's not a great promise, but there's further elements. They've said, listen, we are going to, suggest that these get dropped. And there are other things in this that should give you some concern about relying on this. I personally would not be confident relying on this for a number of reasons. The first is this line here. While respecting operational independence on individual cases, the new protocol issued by the Attorney General provides prosecutors with guidance on how to evaluate the public interest when determining whether or not to pursue charges. Even by their own words here, they're saying that this is guidance and that the individual Crown prosecutor maintains discretion, which of course they do. That discretion is given to them by sort of the whole process. So what that means is that even with this statement out, they could still decide that they don't like you and they want to pursue those charges against you. So relying on this would be a bad idea. Look at this in the context of it being essentially a government promise. And I've seen trucks out there with a sign saying, caution contains government promises. And those signs are invariably on either a septic truck or a manure truck. Nobody puts that sign on a truck that's hauling gold bars. It's always one that's hauling poop. Because relying on a government promise is a great way to end up in jail. So that's our first problem on all of this, right? This is not safe to rely on in any sense. The next problem is this notion that Alberta can take over a kind of charge in the criminal code and just say, we're not going to prosecute it. And I know lots of gun owners are saying, no, this is fantastic, but think about the implications of that. What if the province decided, you know what, we're not going to pursue any robbery charges? Open season, you can commit a robbery and we're not going to pursue it. This would be concerning, right? So the wrinkle on this one is that the federal government almost assuredly has the power to say, no, we're actually taking these over. If the province is not going to pursue them, we will. And there is some case law on that. When I mentioned that the federal government handles these drug trafficking files, well, that was litigated. This went to court and people said, no, it's the province that gets to do these. And you already know how this one ends. You know who won that fight because the federal government litigates those drug trafficking charges. There's some other case law that basically says that the federal government does have the power to step in and ensure that these are being prosecuted or to take over that prosecution. And their ability to do so almost certainly trumps the ability of the provincial crown to say, no, we're not doing that. So that's a further problem. Even if you think that these cases are wrong and you are banking on the courts flipping that and saying, you know what, I think Alberta's going to win this fight. Well, you don't really want to be the poster child of this fight because ultimately this is what I would call an interesting question. You know, it may end up not going anywhere. Like you might take this and you just lose and it never makes it up to the Supreme Court. But let's say the court is looking at reopening this question of, who has jurisdiction over prosecutions. Now you've bought yourself a six-figure legal question. And you're probably sitting there going, you know what? For $100,000 or more, I'd probably rather not take my Mini 14 coyote hunting. I don't know a whole lot of people who think that that's worth it to them. And I know a lot of people in my comments are going to be going, listen, how dare you, you got to support, this and all of that. Well, I'd be doing you guys a disservice if I said, hey, go nuts, like go to town on this stuff, because somebody out there would be facing these charges and you don't want that to be you. You just don't. I certainly don't want it to be me. I don't think I could afford to take a case on my own dime up to the Supreme Court. I make decent money, right? This is a real problem. So the other thing is that when we look at the current composition of the Supreme Court, this is a court that at the moment is getting criticized by academics and lawyers and so forth as being a little too heavily pro-police and pro-state authority. Do you really think that this is the current Supreme Court that you want to take this case to? I've got my bets on how they would rule, and I don't think it would be in your favor. So, long story short, people have been asking, what should I do about this announcement? And I think you should look at it as, you should sort of look at it as what it is. This is the Alberta government thumbing its nose at the federal government and basically saying, listen, we don't like what you're doing. We oppose all of this. Albertans don't like it. This is not good for Alberta. But don't rely on it. Don't rely on it, because there is so much potential here for this to go wrong for you personally. So, again, talk to a lawyer if you're thinking about it, but I certainly will not be relying on any of this to be effective in protecting me, because I don't think it will be. That's kind of sort of the bottom line on this is a political promise. Yeah. How good have, how much has that worked out for you in recent history in terms of relying on politicians to help you? Probably not a whole lot, right? So, lots of people say that, I tend to be kind of depressing in some of these videos. They say, why don't you ever have good news? And unfortunately, I still don't. Like, I would love to be able to be sitting here and saying, this is fantastic. I'm going to go take my AR-15 to do 3-gun again. But I can't. Like, I would just not be doing you guys a service if I did that. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. Lots of people have these questions, so share this one around, because I'm worried that we're going to see people getting themselves in a lot more trouble than they want to be in because of this. And, if you get in trouble because you're relying on these statements, they're not coming to help you, right? It'll be you and your lawyer, and that's it. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you as well to my Patreon supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. At the $50 level, Canada's National Firearms Association, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Mark, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you as well to all of my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.